Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Howard Jean-Denis. Hope everyone's doing well. And so today I'm going to give you a quick tutorial on how to do regression analysis. It is a tool, it's a evaluation technique that's been used in the natural sciences, social sciences for a long time. It's something that I task my students to do in my class all the time. And I think it's something that is helpful for people in society when you're trying to measure the relationship between variable A and variable B. And so what we have is, we have numerous ways you can do it. You can use R, you can use Stata, SPSS, you can use Microsoft Excel, which we're going to use today. And so in a moment, I'm going to share my screen so you'll be able to see exactly what I'm doing. I am a business professor. I have a PhD in business strategy and entrepreneurship. And so I'm going to use some very basic variables, but I want you guys to follow along, and it's something that you should be able to use in your work or in your studies as well. So as you see what's written on the board, it says regression analysis. The basic research question is, how does the size of a business influence performance? So it's a very age-old question. If small businesses will perform not as greatly as large businesses. It's something that's relatively intuitive. There may be other factors like what industry are they in, what type of CEO do they have, the education of the CEO, that type of thing. So let's take a look at the data, and what we'll do is we'll have a chance to interpret the data as well. So you may have heard terms like p-value and r-squared, where we're going to look at those as well. So here we have here on the screen, we have a couple of different variables. And so we have the size of the firm. And so that particular line you see all the way on the left, it basically shows numbers all the way up to 950, and that evaluates the number of employees. The next column has education. So education is categorized for 1, 2, or 3. And so 1 would be having a bachelor's degree for the CEO, the chief executive officer. Number 2 would be having a master's degree. And the 3 would be having a Juris Doctorate, a PhD, some level of advanced degree. The third column would be industry. And so industry will reflect what space that the primary space that the corporation is working in, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's retail, whether it's some technological space. And so that's a 1, 2, or 3. And finally, firm performance, we have a number there describing the annual revenue for the firm, right? And so let's take a look at those terms at the bottom. So regression analysis is typically used in what's called hypothesis testing. So let's just say you have a relationship that you want to test. So another one, if you think about sports, is taller basketball players will score more points, or somebody who goes through an Ivy League school will tend to get more jobs or better jobs. So you can look at the relationship between A and B and X and Y. You can say, well, these two variables are correlated, but remember that phrase you hear all the time, the correlation does not necessarily mean causation, right? So two variables may be going in the same direction, but one may not predict the other one accurately or directly. So next we have the term of null hypothesis. Null hypothesis states that the relationship between variable A, the independent variable, does not have any effect on variable B. So if you're using X and Y or A or B, the first variable does not have an effect on the second variable. So that's the null hypothesis. So when we test a hypothesis, we want to see, does height actually predict the amount of points that you're scoring? Or in this case, does the size of the firm, the number of employees, does it predict the performance? The bigger the firm, the bigger the performance. So if it does predict, if X does predict Y, then we'll find a certain p-value. So the p-value is that third term. And when we say the level of significance, which is very common in academic research, we use a 0.05 level of significance. So basically, if we find a p-value that's lower than that number, so let's say 0.04, 0.03, that means that the variable actually has, the X actually has an effect on the Y. And so if we had a p-value that was bigger than 0.05, so 0.1 or 0.3, that means that the null hypothesis was not rejected. And so variable X does not have an effect on variable Y. So we're going to see that play out, how that plays out in the data. Finally, we have the R-squared. The R-squared basically states that when you're looking at the entire model, in the model, you might have firm size predicting performance, or you might have firm size and CEO education predicting performance. That's called multivariate regression analysis. You'll see that for the entire model, does that model have a strong fit? And so the higher the number of R squared, so if you have an R squared of 0.9, that means that the model predicts a lot of the data in the dependent variable. So if you find the size of the firm, you find the industry, you find the CEO's background, all those things, you put them all together, and you have a high R squared, that means it predicts a lot of performance. If you have a low R squared, that means it predicts a small amount of performance. So how do we do it? Let's take a look at the command. So go up to data. So I'm clicking at the menu at the top and click on data analysis. So you actually have to add the toolkit, the analysis two-pack to your Excel if you don't already have it. So we're going to where it says regression, and I'm clicking on OK. And so the first hypothesis we're going to test is we're going to test CEO education, the level of education of the chief executive officer, and see if it has an effect on firm performance. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click in the input to input the range for the X. That's the independent variable. I'm going to click on CEO education and scroll all the way down. And it's going to go right here, right? And then I'm going to click on firm performance. So I'm clicking the Y range. So this is our dependent variable. I'm going to scroll all the way down. And then the label box is checked. So it's going to include the labels of CEO education and firm performance. And let's see what it does. So this is the regression output. So there's a lot of numbers there. Some students tend to get intimidated, but it's not as complicated as it looks. And so we're going to look at a couple of different data points. And so if you look at the bottom, you'll see where it says CEO education. Let me scroll over to p-value. You find 0.456. So what that says is that's larger than 0.05. So that basically states that in that hypothesis, we are not rejecting the null hypothesis. So we're saying that CEO education does not have a direct effect on firm performance because 0.45 is greater than 0.05. And if you look at the R squared, which is this value up here, we'll see that the R squared is very, very low. It's 0.07. So it's showing that in this model, CEO education does not explain a lot of the data in the dependent variable. So let's delete this and let's do another hypothesis test. So in this case, we're going to look at firm size and we're going to look at firm performance. So the size of the firm, how big it is in terms of employees and the actual the revenue. So click on regression again, and we're going to erase these values. So if you click on the firm size here, and we just scroll down, that's an independent variable. And you click on firm performance, that's our dependent variable, our outcome variable. Labels is already checked, boom. So what do we see here in this one? So look at this regression output, it's different than the last one because it's another hypothesis test. If we look at p-value, we see that it is lower than a level of significance. So it says that firm size is a hypothesis that has found support. We can see that in this data set, in this sample, that the p-value is 0.006. So it's very, very low. It's lower than 0.05. Shows that the size of the firm does have an effect on firm performance. And if you look at the R squared over here, we see that the R squared is much higher than the one for CEO education. And so it's 0.62, which shows that more than half of the data in the dependent variable, more than half of firm performance can be explained by the size of the firm. So that's something that's good. We indicate that you have some strong support for this particular, the second hypothesis. So I hope that helps for you to understand how regression analysis works. It can be used, it can be evaluated in multiple tools, SPSS, Stata, R, and Excel, like what I'm using in this particular video. So shoot me an email if you have any questions. I'd be happy to clarify some things. And I hope you guys have a great day.